Hey guys, Trienne here. I'm really excited to be bringing you this recording. This is a totally different way than I normally do things, but I thought that it would be kind of cool to try. So, as many of you know, I was part of a book collab earlier this year that was called Unleashing Her. And in that book collab, I got the opportunity to work with 40 other wonderful contributing authors. I've interviewed many of them on the podcast, and we were led by Kimberly Olson, which is, you may know her as the Gold Digger Girl. So, in that process, we signed up to be a contributing author and apply for that in May. And our book actually launched on July 7th of 2023, which was amazing. The process was quick. My chapter felt effortless. I felt very comfortable with the writing process. And part of the reason that I felt comfortable with that writing process was because I had already gone through some writing process with this book that I'm going to share with you today. So, what many of you might not know is that something has been on my vision board for as long as I can remember to write a book, to become an author. I love to speak. Writing has been a little bit of a challenge for me. So, that's why I do mostly videos and I've got the podcast. It's just more comfortable for me. And writing, I always felt like my writing was just a little basic. But in all honesty, it's no nonsense, just like me. And it's straightforward and it's vulnerable. And the couple chapters and books that I've been able to collab with this year brought that out in me and made me more comfortable with that. So, actually, what's interesting is this book started in January of 2022. So, we signed on as 35 contributing authors to this project. And the process has been an interesting one for the last almost 2 years. The woman who we originally started to do the book with ghosted all of us. And 4 or 5 women from that group then were like, okay, well, we still want to be authors and we still believe in our chapters and what we wrote because we took a while to do that, right? So we all joined forces and their skill sets are amazing. And the power of networking has been able to bring this book to life and give it the justice that it deserves for these now 11 contributing authors. So I had put in my Facebook group, hey, who wants a recording of my chapter? And part of the reason I wanted to do that was because when we originally wrote these chapters, it was a 3,000 to 5,000 word limit. Now, when I first sat down, I had a hard time doing that. So I actually used Google Talk to Text and I wrote out some bullet points. And then I went back in and I kind of made some changes that I wanted to make and added more of a vision to the story. And that helped me with my process. Then, after it went from 35 authors and our original publisher person ghosted us, we went down to these 11 or 12 authors. And when we did that, we had to take our chapters and we were like, okay, if we all would have wrote 3,000 to 5,000 words, this would be like a double Harry Potter size book. So we took our chapters and we really boiled those down to 1,500 to 2,000 words per chapter. And I have to give big love to my friend Annie because how do you take something that is so personal to you and decide what you keep in and what you take out? So through the power of editing, she went through and she actually took my, I think, 4,500 words possibly, and brought it down to the chapter that it is today, leaving important pieces in there, leaving important parts of the story without changing my voice, which was, I mean, that's just a beautiful talent, right? So, what I wanted to do was read my chapter for you today, which is going to be a little weird with the camera also in my face. But I wanted to read my chapter for you today because I think the tone and the dialect is going to be a good addition to the story itself. But also, there's parts in this where, as I was reading it for myself, I was like, I have to explain more of this. Like, I feel like this piece is really important and I have to expand on it. So, without having to wait any longer, and I want to be conscious of your time. So, that is part of the reason that I decided to do this as a recording but you can also just listen to the audio, is just to make it simple. And I also want to throw in there that belief that if it's in your vision, if it's something that you are being pulled to do, let this be a reminder to you that it's going to take time, but in the end, it's completely worth it. And if it's pulling on your heart, it's there for a reason. It's trying to get your attention that this is something that you need to pay attention to and that you need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay. So the book itself is called Meant for More. And again, there's going to be 11 or 12 chapters. I have to go back and look again. And I've done some interviews on the podcast with some of the people that have been a part of this book. So I'll be doing some postings and things like that within my groups and my business page. But I wanted to get this recorded for you guys on this cold October morning in Michigan where I don't want to be outside right now. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So again, my chapter's title is called Creating the Narrative and the Leadership Lifestyle. So I believe every woman has a leadership voice inside her, calling her to her next level to impact not only her own, but the lives of others. She feels called to serve and to mentor and to make a difference and to guide, starting with herself, because we know that a woman who can lead herself first can lead others. This is the woman who can lead herself first can lead others is a specific takeaway from my very first coach that I hired, Kyra Casey. Something that has stuck with me since I worked with her in 2020 and 2021. She was a beautiful mentor for me. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I took away that has impacted myself personally and my business is that feeling of if I can lead myself through certain things, then when this comes up for someone else, I can help lead them as well through sharing my story. So my inner dialogue for as long as I can remember has been drive, push, earn, next. People are expecting big things from you. My name's Trienne, and it has been mispronounced every way possible. It also provided the first step in learning the importance of a person's identity that is held in their name. A name may carry deep personal, sometimes cultural, familial, and historical connections. My parents divorced when I was 9, and my sister Janess was 16. I've blocked or erased really much of this time from my memory, and I never recall my parents arguing. I have no memory of them showing affection for each other really either. The home wasn't sad in my memory, yet quiet and separate at the same time. Two people with separate lives, separate interests, and clearly separate aspirations. I used to sit between my parents in the church pew and take each of their hands in mine and slowly move them closer until we were a pile of hands in my lap. And even then, it was important to me to try and be a connector, to fix what was happening around me, even when I just didn't know how. Janess moved to live with my dad in town, and I lived on the farm with my mom. My only recollection of this time was my mom and her tenacity, an ironclad facade, as she was probably going through one of the hardest moments of her adult life. She never wavered. I admired her resilience and confident strength. And without realizing, I really have tried to emulate this. I felt split into two different directions as both my parents entered into new relationships. And even though I did not realize that I was being pulled in those two different directions, I expected that I should fit in with whatever was happening around me. However, that process of fitting in also really helped mold me into me. I adapted without notice or consciousness, which had its benefits, but it was an expectation that I put on myself. This feeling of adapting to two different households would be magnified as the years went on. And also, the adaptability would prove to become a strength of mine in future experience, environments, situations, and conversations. It was preparing me for real life, social life, and business, and specifically the ever-changing world of leadership and coaching. Each of my jobs has taught me important lessons. Working summers for a local family's farm market when I was 13 taught me my very important first lessons of customer service skills. What I absolutely loved about that job, I have to share this because Lisa just came into the restaurant that we own a couple weeks ago, and I almost got giddy. I was like, "Lisa, I have to tell you." I talk all the time about that first job as I was 13. She did not let us use calculators. She expected us, and I mean, I was making like $3 an hour at that time, right? So she expected us to greet customers immediately, to get them what they needed quickly. In between customers, we were to keep it stocked, we were to keep it clean. And I mean, we worked so hard. But at the same time, we did it because we had a lot of respect for Lisa. And she taught us how to count back change, which is something that my kids at the restaurant now they have difficulty with because they don't deal with a lot of like handheld money. So her teaching us those skills and then the math skills of not being able to use a calculator, they're just immeasurable. And what's funny is when my daughter, so at the time of this recording, my oldest daughter is 11 and my youngest is 8. And they'll be like, do you know how to do long division or whatever? And I would have to reteach myself how to do long division. And I always joke with them and I'm like, the only math I can do is with dollar signs because that's what I work with every day, right? So I super appreciate that about Lisa and that first job. So my next job after school and on the weekends was at a new restaurant called Ponderosa. I remember doing my damn best and knowing that as long as I continue to give my best for $4.25 an hour, more opportunities were sure to open up for me. Work ethic and loyalty were almost genetic for me, and I would soon learn that it was going to serve me well. I had substantial competitive horse showing experience starting around age 12. My mom and my stepdad, Pat, helped me break out and train my buckskin paint gelding named Andy, the love of my life. I tell you that right now. The early showing years were more about the experience, and they were messy and full of, well, it's great that you keep trying kinds of lessons. And then I was 15 and Andy was 5, and we just clicked. We couldn't be beat at any local show. I learned that my hard work and persistence had a payoff. I would also say that I also learned in any competition, right? You figure out who your friends are. I had situations there where people just stopped talking to me because we were winning a lot and they were upset about it. The thing is, when people are winning, you do not see the work that they are putting in behind the scenes. No one saw that when I got home from work at 9:00 at night on a school night, that I would go out and I would practice my showmanship patterns in the driveway with my horse. I mean, that was my time to be able to reset. That was my way of doing that. And even if I could practice for 5 minutes, it was still practice time. I remember riding in the field in the dark. We didn't have lights in our arena. And I would ride in the dark and just bond with Andy. He was my best friend, right? So after high school, I went to my dream school, the University of Findlay in Ohio. My intention was to do horse training and study physical therapy so that I could build a training center where people with physical and or mental handicaps could safely experience horses as part of their therapy programs. So in the summertime, I had worked with a handicap riding program for the week that it was in Branch County. And I looked forward to that week every single year. I loved seeing the kids' faces light up. I knew that it wasn't going to be just about horse training. It was also going to be about physical therapy. The dream was so much bigger than me. And once at the University of Findlay, I started to work at the local Ponderosa for a few days around classes. I cleaned stalls for the work study program and for $2 a stall. And I came home a few weekends to work at our home Ponderosa. After being in the program for a year, I was offered a great opportunity to do an internship in Oklahoma at a prestigious cutting horse training facility. What an opportunity, right? It was an intense summer of heat. sweat, and horsehair everywhere. We were on the job 24 hours a day, and it was our job to get things done when no one else could or would or had time for. I had a wonderful mentor there named Wendy, who we lived together, and she was so welcoming and she just had the kindest heart. Um, when I left there in November, I believe, of 1998, the biggest thing that I missed was Wendy. We kept in contact for a long time after that. She made my summer. She was just a beautiful person. I learned one of my most important lessons. When working toward a dream, expect people to respect you. You know, there are a lot of from to Colorado. We traveled every weekend. We traveled times weeks at a time. I got to meet I had some amazing experiences. Um, but I also had a situation where I felt like I was disrespected and not treated fairly. And it was time for me to stand up for myself and say, you know what? I'm going home. This is not specifically for me. So, unable to continue studying at University of Findlay because I had no money, and it was middle of the semester. I took a semester off. I returned to my hometown, Coldwater, and I gathered all those dreams and I started to piece them back together. 6 months later, I moved to Iowa because I realized that newfound ability to travel, to move and work wherever the hell I wanted to take myself. So a year later after that, I returned to Michigan, where I attended Western Michigan University. I worked at Bennigan's restaurant during the week as a server. And then on the weekends, I would drive home and I would work as a shift supervisor at Ponderosa. Again, it came to I have to push myself. I have to earn. It's next. There wasn't time to rest and relax because I had things I needed to take care of. It was that personal responsibility. Exhausted, but always just one step closer to my bachelor's degree in business management. I should have been so proud at this moment. And instead, with a few jobs available and mounting student debt and credit card debt from paying tuition, I moved back to my hometown and contacted my mentor and my friend. And he created a position for me at the Ponderosa on the management team. I negotiated my salary with the district manager to be over 6K more than their average newly promoted manager. I remember he asked me what I needed to make. And when I told him what I felt that I deserved, and I confidently said what I felt like I deserved, he said, that's more than my average manager makes when I hire them. Why do you think you deserve that? And I said, because I am better than average and I've had experience with this company for over 12 years. So what's funny is I had started at that Ponderosa when I turned 16, like I shared in the story. And interesting enough, today I'm a operating partner in that same restaurant. So when I told him, I've been with this company for 12 years, the Bennigans that I worked at up in Portage was actually also owned by what the company was called LaBelle Management at the time. So they considered me working for the same company. My leadership career had started. I was first promoted into a shift supervisor role, and I was an awful boss. I mean, I was the worst. I was intimidating. I tried to do everything myself. I spent unnecessary hours at the restaurant and told people what to do without understanding them or their input. I thought I could get the best results by just focusing on my growth and my career progression. And I rarely had team members that I considered friends because I drew a very thick, very dark black line with many. And I kept myself very closed off. It was not a fair and equal culture. This led to unhappy crews, overwork, and burnout for me. And although I reached my goal of becoming a top position in my company, I had no network or personal growth to show for it. I was ready to move away, which truly had been my plan all along. I had my heart set on anywhere but this town. escape and be free. And then I met Bill. I knew within the first month that we were meant for each other. I don't know if he knew that. He was born and raised in the city right next to my hometown and had no plans to leave. He held a great job, had all of his friends and his family local, and I decided that if I wanted this hometown boy, then I would have to stay and do whatever I could to have the career and the life that I wanted to create right here in my hometown. So I continued at Ponderosa, where I was constantly having to rebuild my team, apologize for my sharp tongue due to my self-consciousness and a lack of confidence. I was bitter, moody, unfocused, overworked, and overstressed. And I was in that position for 7 years. I thought I had a vision of a higher career, but I was just looking for the next high, the next award, the next celebration, the next event. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. We were married in 2010 and we wanted to start our family. However, with my stress level approaching burnout, I wasn't open and I wasn't ready to start a family. I knew I had to make a choice, and I was recruited by another company. Promises of a work-life balance with a company that was mainly focused on women. I made the transition to clothing retail in 2011, and I was pregnant with Tegan a week later. This transition from focusing on my career to really wrapping my mind around becoming a mom was a major identity shift for me. In this new role, I was working for a retail company, Maurice's. I was no longer the breadwinner, and I must admit that the fact that putting my career aspirations aside to start a family was a really hard thing for me to rationalize. I fought my internal battle about self-worth, body image, and just basic enoughness. I was living inside habits over and over and no focus on personal results and goals. I had so much to learn. In 2015, I had my second child, and I just got tired of feeling like I was just living to survive day by day. I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, living off of coffee and Three Musketeers. So I decided at that time to put a focus on personal development, serving my team, creating and stabilizing a work culture vision, and I began to sleep and breathe everything geared towards growth. This included my personal health. This included my relationships. I changed the way that I parented. I really took a look at everything that I was doing that I felt like wasn't working for me and how I could do those things differently. I began to look for opportunities outside of my job description where I could make an impact on my team, my company, my customers. I turned my thinking from can I to how can I and what if I did. I learned that if it comes into the mind or it's laid on your heart, it's a calling. We changed, we expected and celebrated the personal growth of our small team. Personal development and asking for feedback just became a part of the normal conversation. We were going next level without even knowing it. We succeeded. We promoted new store leaders, elevated the service in our personal store. This brought in more clients and raised the bar for surrounding stores. And at that point is when the inner dialogue changed. Drive, push, serve. Next. People are accepting big things from you. With this success, I was still looking for a way to make an impact on women in business on a larger scale. And the ideas just continued to flood me every day. I started to feel trapped. Maybe some of you have felt this way. I felt trapped inside the four walls of my little retail store, and I wanted to reach out to more women. It was uncomfortable for me to be comfortable. So in 2018, I took myself out of that corporate setting for the first time, and I started creating my coaching company, Be That, Create That. Now I get to focus on leading women in business confidently to their next level. Growth is still my main focus, but it's not just my growth. Through one-on-one coaching, my Facebook group called the Female Leader Headquarters, a weekly email, live trainings on and offline, and public speaking, and now writing, I can get my message out and make the impact that I've always really felt called to make. And although the narrative has changed from earning and expectation and all the heavy to serving and accepting, there are moments that I still have to self-regulate and ground myself in my relationships. It's so easy for women in leadership positions to get caught up in their daily accomplishments. And I aspire that my legacy is that I help others to see and believe in themselves, even if in a single conversation. So remember to spend time with what the real accomplishments are: your health, your relationships, and the person that you become in the process. So that's the end of the chapter. This is my first time reading through it completely out loud. There's definitely a couple places that I would go back and change, maybe add to, maybe change some wording. However, again, we named this creating or changing the narrative, creating the leadership lifestyle. And part of the reason was, as you heard in the beginning, it was very like drive, push, earn, next. I mean, that achievement, I had to figure out, what was next, and work towards that, rather than really stopping and realizing what was going on inside. I had to, at the end there, when I had my second daughter, I was just acting in a way that I knew was not healthy for me, right? Always uptight, burnt out, overworked, whatever. And I was doing it to myself. So I had to stop and I had to say, as this person that I'm wanting to become, what does she sound like? What does she do? What is she known for? And it became more about the people that were a part of my team and seeing them grow and develop alongside me than it was, being known for those accomplishments, those wins, those awards, whatever. It was especially now that I'm a operating partner in that Ponderosa restaurant, there are no awards to be had, right? So for me, the daily award is that we are hitting our sales by taking care of people that work for us and people that are a part of our community in the restaurant. They come in and we know them by name. It's about having one conversation at a time that may inspire somebody on their own growth journey. And that's the legacy that I would like to leave, is to really help impact others by believing in their own confidence and what they can do next. So I want to thank you guys for, if you've had the time to be on this entire recording, thank you so much. And you can get more conversations like this inside the Female Leader Headquarters, listening to the Be That Create That podcast. I do group and one-on-one coaching. I also do retreats and webinars and master classes. And that is where you will hear the most out of all of that. And when it's going to be is in those couple of social channels. So thank you again so much for joining me today. And the Meant for More book will be out on October 23rd. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.